Comic Boom.
Hey guys, Comic Boom here to review Heroes in Crisis number 9, the final issue. And, well, are we really that surprised that Wally West is alive? I'm not. Is it, let's face it, it involves time travel, it involves Tom King. We knew that it wasn't likely going to end making a lot of sense because it was quite clear as the series progressed that it was very up and down. The story was all over the place. It was nonsensical. It lacked continuity. It was not continuous from issue to issue. It didn't make a lot of... the characters were all out of character. They didn't make a lot of sense. It didn't really deal with any kinds of post-traumatic stress as it was sort of advertised it would. The therapy at the sanctuary... I can't imagine anybody having to endure that type of therapy on any metric and expect to get something out of it. And in fact, the therapy not only did not work for anyone, but the therapy actually is one of the primary factors that actually caused Wally West to lose his mind and accidentally, essentially execute everyone at the sanctuary, including Poison Ivy, who is only alive by virtue of the fact that her essence was apparently contained in a flower that she gave to Harley Quinn before her death. That same flower, that same flower / rose that ultimately bloomed in Gotham Harbor that Wally West gave to his past self and placed on Gotham Harbor, and it eventually bloomed to become Poison Ivy, and that was in issue 8. Now, what happens here is, the rumors I suspect are all true. Wally West is indeed alive, and he will probably end up as a member of the Suicide Squad. At the end of this issue, Wally West is taken into custody by the Trinity. The Trinity have no role in this issue. In fact, why the Trinity was even in this series to begin with seemed to be nothing more than to provide lip service and pretty pictures to be drawn by various artists, and particularly Clay Mann, who is very good at drawing Lois Lane's breasts and butt, and Batgirl's breasts and butt as well. There's also Donna Troy. She looked pretty good, and Harley Quinn didn't look bad either. I mean, let's face it, there's more than a few females that look pretty good. And I suppose if, for the women, if you're looking into some attractive men, I mean, they weren't drawn that bad either, I suppose. But, yeah, what happened? It's not much happened. I really don't got much to say here. More nonsense dialogue from heroes showing. I don't know why they're showing more of the confessions. It was, the confessions don't contribute to the story. It was well established that the confessions didn't reveal any secrets anyway, so the fact that the confessions went out to the rest of the world and were revealed by Wally West, so what? He didn't really reveal much. Oh, unless you consider secret identities of, Bruce, Batman, Superman, and all the secret identities of the various heroes. Unless you consider that a big deal. That's never explained. Why? I don't know. I guess you'll have to talk to Tom King. Look, there's no question here that this was an extremely badly written and poorly written tale. Issue 8 that dealt with essentially the suicide of Wally West had parts where the dialogue I thought was good. It was a good almost a good self-contained story. The analogy I use for Tom King is sort of like a forest fire. If you think of a tree and think of a forest is made up of trees. You can have a really good looking tree, but when you pan and when you take a broad view of things, you'll see that while that tree looks really good, the rest of the forest is in fact on fire. That's Tom King in a nutshell. Occasionally, within the context of a larger narrative, he's going to have individual issues that might actually be not bad, might even be good, might even have some emotional impact, like issue 8 of Heroes in Crisis did for me. But in the context of the story as a whole, it's an outright disaster. So it is possible to have individually decent stories within a larger narrative that are good, but have the larger narrative be a disaster. Heroes in Crisis is a disaster by any metric, and it's unfortunate. There are so many ways that it went wrong, but in this issue, Booster Gold along with Blue Beetle, Batgirl, and Harley Quinn simply use, I guess, more of Booster Gold's tech. He must have had some lying around, and they basically went 5 days into the future to prevent Barry Allen from killing his future self. That's really all they did. And in order to complete the loop, the time loop, so to speak, they simply Booster suggested that they simply go to the 25th century and get a clone body, and allow the time loop to continue with the younger Flash, younger Wally West, completing the loop, and then becoming the older West, etc., etc. It's actually not even that much of a headache. Endgame gave me more of a headache than the understanding the time conundrum here in Heroes in Crisis. So I mean, it's not the time thing wasn't so much the big deal. It was the tainting of Wally West overall that I really had an issue with. The confessionals lost their impact in the first issue. It was clear that they weren't going to have much of an impact, and it's really unfortunate. The art here in this issue was okay. Overall, I will say this about the series. I think that it's a huge disappointment. I think that the bloom of the rose that becomes the new poison ivy is off the Tom King rose. If only Tom King could bloom like poison ivy does in this issue, everything would be hunky-dory. But that's not the case. Tom King's off Batman, thank God. And now Tom King, of course, has his Batman Catwoman series. He can complete the disaster that he has in Batman in another series, and we can carry on with Batman with actually stories with a cohesive narrative. That's such a good thing. I'm so glad DC is doing that. And as far as Heroes in Crisis goes, this is best left forgotten. Unfortunately, the reality is now we're left with a tainted Wally West, who will probably become a member of the Suicide Squad. Maybe he'll be more interesting as a Suicide Squad member, I guess. But one thing's for sure, he's not the symbol of rebirth anymore. He's been forever tainted. Maybe the events of Doomsday Clock will redeem Wally West. Maybe it's possible they can undo the character assassination that Tom King has inflicted upon Wally West. I don't know. I will say I'm extremely disappointed with DC editorial, the fact that they approved this storyline. I actually believe that Tom King had no idea how he was going to finish Heroes in Crisis. This is a disaster. I don't think he knew what he was doing from the get-go. I really don't think he had this end game. I don't think he had this ending in mind. Or if he did, I really don't think he had some idea how this was going to end. I can't believe editorial approved this. I really hope that the writing is on the wall here. My prediction that I hope is going to come true is that editorial will take an increasingly skeptical view of any ideas that Tom King has in the foreseeable future, unless they're short narratives. Give Tom King, if you're an editor talking to Tom King, if Tom King can't tell you how it's going to end in his pitch, don't let him do it. It's as simple as that. Give him no more than 12 issues. Actually, I wouldn't give him any more than 6. Just give him a one-shot. He hits the one-shots out of the park. He has his Batman Annual number 2s. He does that. But in any event here, I want to say one thing about the Wally West, character in Heroes in Crisis. It's so disappointing to see how, in this particular issue, apparently Wally West's motivation was that he says he didn't want to screw up like Barry did with Flashpoint. He was so upset because Barry Allen, of course, went back in time, saved his mother from being killed, and that created the Flashpoint paradox, which ultimately ended up having Linda and the kids, Wally West's wife and children, erased from the timeline. And of course that was a disaster, and that led to the Flashpoint paradox. Wally didn't want to do that, really didn't want to do that. And so apparently in some twisted way, Wally thought he was doing it right by somehow going back, collecting all the data, and releasing the news of Sanctuary to the world, so the whole world would know that all these heroes suffer, and that they're getting help, and that this was his way of sort of redeeming things. Which really, when you think about it, makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But that's the twisted mind and the twisted thinking of Wally West. Doesn't make any sense. In fact, what Wally West was equally as horrendous as what Barry Allen did. Barry Allen went back into the past to save his wife, to save his mother from being murdered, and completely destroyed the timeline. And what Wally West did was went into the future and killed his future self, which, when you think about it, could have equally negative effects moving forward, just as much as Barry going back in time, if you want to use that logic. So I don't think there is logic here. I think that what Tom King tried to do is that he thought it maybe sounded cool. It sounded good on paper, and maybe when he read it out loud to himself and looked in the mirror, maybe he thought maybe he thought it actually made sense for the 12 seconds delusion that he was in, or delusional state he was in when he said it. But this really doesn't work by any metric as far as I'm concerned. But it is what it is, guys. I don't really have a lot of nice to say about this. I will say this, but I will say that Professor Bill and I think we're going to be having a discussion on Heroes in Crisis. I think we got a plan to be on his channel either this week to discuss Heroes in Crisis, sort of a retrospective, discuss the final issue of Heroes in Crisis, and discuss the series overall. And it'll probably be a much more detailed discussion than the quick synopsis I'm giving now, or at least that's the plan. So you guys can guess. I'm sure most of you who are subscribed to my channel, you have to subscribe to Professor Bill. It's an awesome channel. The guy is just he's insanely knowledgeable on all things Marvel and DC and indie and everything else. So he's you gotta definitely check out his channel if you haven't already, as I'm sure most of you have. So guys, tell me what you think of Heroes in Crisis issue 9, the final issue. Tell me how bad or how good you think it is, and what you think of the future of Wally West holds. And hit the subscribe button. Follow me on Twitter, Metropolis40. Keep an eye out for the Professor Bill and I's discussion on the final issue of Heroes in Crisis. And until next time, Comic Boom out.